Well, hello, this is Adam. Welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. Today I'm going to walk around and talk about some of the strange features and quirks of my '69 Eldorado here. It's a 26,000 mile original car finished in Ramper green. It's kind of this dark green metallic. It almost looks like a graphite color until you get it in the sun, and then it's got this beautiful green metallic flake in the paint. So it's Ramper green with a black top and a black leather interior. Just a beautiful car. These Eldorados certainly represented the epitome of General Motors design in the 1960s, which was turning out hit after hit after hit, and it's hard to find fault with this design. Absolutely beautiful. So, let's walk around it and talk about some of its features, the good, the bad, the ugly, and learn a little bit more about the car. Well, hey, this is Adam, and welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. Going over some of the unique features and quirks of this '69 Eldorado. Thought you might enjoy it. This is, as you can see, a 26,000 mile original car. Even the steering wheel is in really nice shape, which is strange for one of these. First unique feature of this car is you notice it has this hooded instrument cluster that was introduced in 1969. It's kind of safety padded theme. And there's actually an area here to let light in. That's what the purpose of this is, to let sunlight in and kind of diffuse it. You can see on the underside that it lets the light in through there too. And my guess is that there were some complaints that the gauges were hard to read in the daytime when they weren't backlit, because this hooded panel was so far forward, they had to put that in to help cast some light on the gauges. Second interesting thing is the power antenna controls on this car. You notice that there's an up and a down arrow. In previous Eldorados, you'd actually push in or pull this radio button, but on these, to operate the power antenna, you just push the button. I think that's more convenient and more ergonomic. But later GM cars, you turn the radio on and that would activate it. That's not true for this. You actually have to raise and lower the antenna manually. Also, this car has, turn that off, has cruise control, but it's a two-step cruise control. You have to first flick this switch on, then you depress the button at the end of the instrument cluster, and it says cruise in green lettering when it's operating. And you can turn it off by either flipping the switch or depressing the brake. But it's a two-step operation on these, and it's on the dash, as opposed to later GM cars would have that multi-function stalk that you'd have to turn it on. Next is the wiper control, which is nicely integrated into the door panel. And Cadillac did that for a number of years, even in the early 70s. And it's a 3-speed wiper, you notice, low, medium, and high, not just low and high. But I thought that the control was really cool in how it was integrated in here. Next is the Twilight Sentinel, where you flip this little lever, and that will automatically turn the headlights on and keep them on after you shut the car off for a period of time. You can vary the amount of time by moving this toward the max, so you can just turn it off completely. You put it on off. This car also has the Guidematic Auto headlamp dimming feature, where you put your bright lights on and it'll automatically dim them if this switch is on. You can set it to dimming them far away when the light sensor detects their oncoming headlights far away, or near, or you can just have it off like I had it. Kind of a not so handy feature these days with how much traffic there is on the roads. It might have been better back then. Next on here is the tilt and telescoping wheel, along with the rim blow horn. So this is not the horn. There's no horn pad here, and this is a unique steering wheel for 1969 Cadillacs. It was redesigned in 1970, and the 68s also used a different one. This is a tilt and telescoping wheel. You can move this lever here, and then the wheel moves in and out. like this. And it does tilt too. That's what this lever is over here. So you can move it up or down. And it does have the rim blow horn, which means that you pinch this inner portion, the flexible portion of the rim. This car also has the optional trumpet horn, which is, I think, 4 horns under hood. So here you go. It's pretty loud. It does have automatic climate control. This does have a vent setting. Notice there's no economy setting. When you have this on auto, whether it's low fan speed, automatic, which controls the fan speed as well as the mode door operation, or the high speed, the air conditioning compressor runs. The vent is the only position where it does not. And it's just kind of a low speed fan and regular fresh air coming out of the vent. Later, they would have an econ position in the 70s so that you could try to save fuel, as well as having the air conditioning compressor running all the time when it's cold outside as well. It is kind of this dial setting, which I like. Later years, that dial setting would be red, and then I think it turned white around 70 degrees to 80 degrees, and then red again to be hot. Next is this reading light over here that you wouldn't necessarily even know is a reading light, but it is. There's a switch that's really disguised up here that you have to flip. And you can see it, again, it does cast some light, but it would be hard to detect that that was indeed there. Next is the flat floor in these Eldorados compared to the non-front wheel drive cars that have a big hump here. This is clearly a flat floor. Lots of room in the front. You can spread out. No issue, again, because it's front wheel drive. Next cool feature is you see the front door latch there to get out of the passenger compartment, but there's also a door latch back there for the rear passenger to activate in the event they want to get out. It used to be on the driver and passenger side both a few years earlier, but by 1969 it was just on the passenger side door. Still a nice feature. Next cool feature of this is the auto trunk release, which you go into the glove box, you push this button here, and the trunk opens. I should make a feature about that, the wonderful key buzzer that was so ubiquitous on these GM cars, and it illuminates the engine temperature light. Some people say, well, they did that for a test light. Well, you could have it be a test light while you're cranking the car too. It just seems weird to me to have that light go off with the key in the ignition. Big trunk here. There's the blower style rear window defogger. Now, the strange part about this is the auto trunk release and Creedence Clearwater Revival 8-track, if anybody wants it. But it has a vacuum pull down, so it's not electric as it was in later years. So you can hear it clicking, and now it's closed. Kind of an interesting feature, but more gimmicky than anything. I do like how they integrated this reverse light here into the fuel filler door by 1969, but this is another strange feature of this car. This fuel filler door is absolutely awful to fill the gas on your car. There's really not much clearance in here to get your hand. You see, this is sharp on the back side of this, and you can't barely just kind of get your hand in here to get it out. And there's also the wiring for the reverse light. This is an absolutely awful design, one of the hardest cars to fill, especially nowadays with the filler necks that have that backflow thing on them. There's not much room to get it in here. But in any case, just a terrible place for fuel fill and really hard to get your hand in here. This, I don't know why they made this so long. This is very sharp, like I said, and you invariably kind of scrape your knuckle as you're trying to do something. And these edges are also sharp on here. This would never, ow, I just hurt myself in that spring. That spring is also, it's a pretty beefy spring on this thing. There's not really a place to kind of grab it nicely either and get your finger out of the way here. This is just terrible. I don't know what they were thinking with that. Probably the worst design thing on the whole car. But it is a darn good looking car. Next is this kinked back window here. It's got some plan view. And you notice that there is a line in it. On the inside, what they did is they actually etched this groove in here and then put a hot wire in it to bend the glass. So you could get this plan view. In other words, it's kind of curved. Beautiful detail on this car. Again, just a great looking car. Next is the huge cornering light down here. Later Cadillacs would have it up in the fender, but this is pretty low. And it is huge, and it does illuminate. I'll turn it on so you can see it. There you go. Neat, handy-dandy feature. And you hear that mechanical clicking sound. Next is the rear window and how it retracts. You see it's back on this car, but watch, it comes out of the sail panel. It doesn't go down into the quarter panel. Very similar to the Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, but most people expect it to drop down here. No, it actually retracts back here into the sail panel. Next are these very high back bucket seats. Cadillac was trying to do the right thing here for safety. And if you look at their interiors in this era, they had very high back buckets with headrests. And people ended up not liking them. They thought it was too claustrophobic, particularly if you were in the rear seat. So they kind of later on lowered it. But for a few years in the late 60s, early 70s, their seats looked like this with these big headrests. They are comfortable though. And we'll take one last walk around the car. Notice from a design standpoint, Cadillacs often had these square wheel arches as opposed to the round ones. The Sevilles had the round ones in some cases, but Eldorados and the other Cadillacs often had these square wheel arches. And Cadillac just had a different philosophy from Ford and GM did in general during this era. You know, Ford, like the Mark III, the fender, the top of the fender is perfectly straight. The Mark IV, it does dive down a little bit, but this has a nice lead-in where the leading edge of the fender is a little bit lower and then it gradually rises. Just gives the car some great surfacing. Perfect color of a car for a fall day like this. Another interesting tidbit of information on this car is that this is a two-piece hood that's seamed down the middle. This wind split molding disguises the seam. It's metal finished ahead of it and behind it. And on the 71 Eldorado, they went to a one-piece hood, and it saved about $9 a hood, even though it was a bigger piece of sheet metal, because they didn't have to weld those two pieces together. These Eldorados from 68, 9, and 70 also have these so-called pork chops over here. The 67s don't, because the 68, 9s, and 70s have the hidden wipers. So the 67 does not. It has exposed wipers and a beautiful cowl panel here on the 67 that went away. I guess the hidden wipers were all the rage. Sound of a Cadillac 472 running. Thanks again for watching this video on the 69 Eldorado and its strange features and quirks. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you.